We were over 10 minutes into this episode with 0 laughs.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of the Rehearsal Season 2 premiere. I'm David Chen, with Patrick Klepek. Patrick, apparently you had not watched Season 1 of the Rehearsal before this last few weeks. Is that correct?
I when I knew you wanted us to watch the Rehearsal Season 2, my understanding was that, at least from I hadn't watched the show, and so I was like, oh, but from the framing device that I understand about the show, seems a little more anthology based, and so I can probably jump into Season 2 and be okay. But I should get a flavor of Season 1, and my intention was to just watch an episode or two just so I could be in the right frame of mind. And then I ended up watching the entire season, finishing it up yesterday prior to the premiere of Season 2.
And what did you think, Patrick?
I found it to be a morally reprehensible show.
Mostly because it involves kids, right? Like, that's the problem, right?
On a storytelling level, I think the Rehearsal kind of loses the plot, whatever it has, the moment that Nathan Fielder becomes a character, because I don't know who Nathan Fielder is.
Right, who he really is.
Like,
right?
Are you playing a character? Is this Nathan Fielder I just, at no point is that clear, and as a result of that, I found it very difficult to attach myself to him, and the absurdist elements like weren't enough. And then yes, like the moment the show became about all these families and child actors, and specifically like the moment where the kid is confused about whether Nathan Fielder is his father, I found how that was handled by the show, by Nathan, to again be like morally reprehensible. I like the show just like completely like lost me at that point. It's like, I don't know what I'm watching.
Right.
I don't know why I'm watching this. I could not finish it. I was like, I have to see what this is going to do by the end. The ending only made me want to throw the remote at the screen a little bit more, which put me in a very interesting place watching Season 2.
Well, I'm going to say, I thought the Rehearsal Season 1, yes, I agree with your qualms. I'm not like saying it was morally above board, but I thought it was largely a masterpiece. And it's very interesting because episode 1 of that show promises a very different show than we end up getting.
Yes.
Right? And episode 1 in itself is a masterpiece, like, in my opinion.
I was
like
fully
you're like, oh my gosh, I'm hooked. Like, let's do this.
6 episodes of this, like,
incredible.
I cannot wait.
But then it goes in such a different direction, and then it's safe to say also that the Rehearsal Season 2 goes in a vastly different direction as well. And that's one of the things about the show, is that like you never know what you're going to get in a given episode, and there is something exciting about that. I agree. I share the same moral concerns as you, especially with regards to children. I think anyone who signs up for anything Nathan Fielder related should know what they're signing up for. Like, it's very easy to Google Nathan Fielder and his antics, and so like if you're an adult, you have no excuse. But
I do not place the entirety of the blame at Nathan Fielder's footsteps. I as a parent, I found many of the decisions the parents are making to also be deeply questionable. Yes,
but I found the ending of Season 1 to be brilliant. It sounds like it was very frustrating to you, but this idea of like, there's a lot of questions in the show. I would say some of the big questions the show asks are, right, like, is it possible to remove variables from actual real life situations, right? Like, if you can rehearse over and over again, can you master real life, right? That's an open question. Another question is, what is the difference between playing a role and becoming the role, right? And how blurry is that line? And I think Season 1 really plays with that line, particularly towards the end, in a way that I thought was brilliant. So like, I left Season 1 with chills in a good way. But I understand if it's not for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I felt those questions really interesting. And in the first episode, when the guy is doing the revealing that he lied about his level of sort of academic achievement, and he in the bar after rehearsing all of these incredible scenarios is like, when faced with the reality, is unable to like initially climb over to do the thing he's supposed to do. I'm like, wow, like
it's incredible.
That is an interesting that is transcendent. And ultimately, the problem is being like, I don't know who Nathan Fielder is, and so all these questions you're at, like that you found really interesting, I found no introspection into the answers of those, because if I don't know who this person is, he is a deeply unreliable narrator. And the moment that you're an unreliable narrator, I find it difficult to find any emotional resonance within like that character. And like that ultimately, like putting aside like my feelings on like how it handled like parents and kids, like I just couldn't like, who are you? And I just couldn't get past that with the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, he does try to answer that question a little bit in season 2 of The Rehearsal, right? In the season 2 premiere, Gotta Have Fun, Nathan Fielder decides to apply his resources and skills to an interesting problem: aviation disasters. Very timely show, by the way. Nathan reveals he has studied aviation disasters throughout history, and one major issue is that when the captain behaves recklessly, the first officer often doesn't feel empowered to bring up any concerns. Nathan realizes he can apply his skills to help pilots role play and become more comfortable doing this, bringing up their concerns to their coworkers. And the first episode has him following one specific pilot, Moody, and having him role play a flying scenario with his girlfriend. Patrick, overall thoughts on the season 2 premiere of The Rehearsal?
I found it to be slightly triggering because I'm like, this is the trap I fell into last time. Like, this seems really interesting. And this, as a framework for a show, I could easily see many episodes. But at my worry is like, at one point, is this character that I don't find interesting or relatable or experience all that empathy for going to insert himself into the story and distract from the framework that I like at the beginning? And I expect that's going to happen at some point. And maybe it'll go in a different direction. And maybe the lack of, if it doesn't involve like families and children, I'll find like a better way into it. But I thought this first episode was like brilliant. I don't know how you like couldn't not have that response. I had a very similar reaction to this that I had to the first episode of the first season, which is, this is a fascinating way to explore people's emotional journeys and the questions they won't answer for themselves. But is that what this show actually wants to be? And that question won't be answered for me until I get further into it.
I also thought it was brilliant, and I should say, some may consider this to be a minor spoiler for the rest of the show, but so be warned, but my understanding is this whole season is going to deal with the aviation stuff. That is my understanding. So it's not going to be like a different kind of disaster every week. Like, it's like all going to be aviation, which is just like, basically Warner Brothers just gave Nathan Fielder money to deal with his obsessions. That's kind of like what it is. And there's something really incredible about that. There's something really just like, they gave him millions of dollars to like recreate these extremely elaborate things, just to focus on whatever he's fixated on at that particular point in time. And I think it's going to be really fascinating. I don't know how much he's going to insert himself into it, but I think it's clear that he is like a central character in the show in this season in a way that, like, in season 1 it wasn't necessarily the case, or season 1 episode 1 it wasn't necessarily the case, but like, I think it's clear we're clearly exploring his psyche and what his obsessions are and his insecurity at being a comedian. Now, again, huge questions about how real any of this is. Like, is Nathan Fielder actually insecure about being a comedian, or is he just saying he is? Like, we never really know. He remains an inscrutable figure, and I do think you're right that does potentially hurt the show. But for me, it kind of makes the show more fascinating. You know, like, I'm always wondering, where does Nathan Fielder's real persona, like his real life person, end and the persona begin? Like, does that even exist? And I'm always like trying to see the seams when I'm watching the show, and it's difficult to find. So anyway,
yeah, I find that I guess for you that's a positive. For me, that's a negative. And like,
right.
I love absurdist comedy and like other stuff that Fielder has been. I've not seen Nathan For You. I'm not curious to go down that rabbit hole to see. So many of my friends and people I respect like adore that show.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
My guess is I would like Nathan For You quite a bit more than how I responded to The Rehearsal, and even the stuff that Fielder's been involved in, like How To with John Wilson, which we've covered.
Yeah,
this was last season, is like one of my favorite pieces of work, like of art. Period. Like, but How To with John Wilson, which also has a like deeply inscrutable main character protagonist is someone following their obsessions. It's such a deeply human show. Like, I find it very easy to find my way in. And again, they're very different shows, but they both are following personal obsessions to the point of absurdity. and making connections between those things. But I found How to with John Wilson to be such a human show, and one that celebrated people and even John Wilson himself. And I guess I just find Fielder, whatever version of Fielder is here, I have difficulty like picking apart the humanity of like him as a person or a character. And that's the impenetrable part I kind of find about getting to the next layer of the show that other people seem to get to that I was not able to with the first season of The Rehearsal.
I also think Fielder probably has a layer of like more morally objectionable than How to with John Wilson, where he's kind of looping people into these scenarios. You don't know what the producers have told these people about how they're going to be depicted in any way. And often they're depicted in ways that are like unflattering or in a way that you might laugh at them. I felt like John Wilson was just going to places and pointing the camera at things. Like,
yes.
I did not, but like with Nathan Fielder, there's a whole layer of like deception. There's this apparatus of like deception that he employs that I understand people can object to. And so like, that's a huge difference between the shows. That said, one of the things I really like about Nathan Fielder is I think he's actually a great interviewer. There's a part where he interviews this pilot Moody, where he's lying on his bed in a very provocative position, and he's like asking him questions about like he says like, oh yeah, I'm afraid my girlfriend might like meet people at Starbucks or whatever, she might like run away with someone at Starbucks. And he's like, what do you mean? And he'll like dive deep into like something that they said in a way that is very revealing and that I appreciate. And it reveals like parts of the human psyche. Again, insofar as you can trust anything you're seeing on screen is authentic, which is unclear at best. So
those interviews, I mean, those are some of my favorite parts where he's just talking to people. One thing he does, I think it's part of what makes him a great interviewer, or he's able to get people to open up, is your natural impulse. I'm sure you experience this all the time, like hosting podcasts, is to fill space, right?
Yes.
Is like when there is a gap, the software you have on your phone, like when you listen to podcasts, the one I use, Overcast, like if it detects a certain amount of time in between, like people talking, a pause, it will delete that to make everything sound more natural. And there's a very human impulse to like when there is silence to fill it with something, anything. And that is even more something that you feel you're trained to do, really, to fill that space when you are doing pseudo public performances like interviews, recording podcasts. If you watch Nathan Fielder closely, he's constantly shutting up. There is negative space within his conversations where he leaves elongated pauses. And whereas the normal dynamic is, if you're the interviewer, the power dynamic there is like, well, the interviewer, the person who's talking, they should fill that with space, ask a question, find something to follow up on. Fielder doesn't. He absolves himself of that part of it. Like he still holds the power in that dynamic, but he'll ask something, someone will say something, and then he'll just let it sit awkwardly for seconds at a time. And you'll notice, if you start like kind of like witnessing that dynamic, what happens is the person he's talking to fills that space.
Yeah.
And when they do that, they do so from an impulsive, and then if you're asking emotionally charged questions, a more vulnerable state, because you're acting, or you're responding impulsively as opposed to with a calculation. So I think that ends up being a lot of his entryway into really introspective conversations, is really just shutting up.
Yeah. Agreed completely. Patrick, any highlights from this episode that you want to mention? I want to say one of my favorite moments from the episode is when he can't get into this pilot's lounge. And so he builds a full-scale replica of the... I mean, visually, the show is extremely striking. Just Nathan Fielder standing in front of this like green screen projection volume type thing. It's just like, wow, that looks incredible. There's this one scene where he like emerges out of this soundstage like that has a plane crash simulated behind it with these people dead on the ground and all this stuff. It just like looks amazing. There's just moments of awe and wonder that I had watching The Rehearsal season 1 that I also experienced watching this episode as well. But he creates the scale model of this airport with like the freaking nursing station and the advertisements and all.
Panda
like
Express.
Panda Express, which like what appears to be a fully functional Panda Express, with like the grill and the different walks and everything. And the sole reason for that seemingly is so that he can observe what happens in the pilot's lounge because he couldn't go in the pilot's lounge in real life. And then, of course, no one says anything in the pilot's lounge, which is just incredible. Incredible that he went to all this trouble for basically.
Why aren't you talking?
That's an amazing reveal moment in the episode, you know? I also just found it very profound, Moody talking with his girlfriend at the end of the episode, because it really feels like Moody was uncomfortable talking with his girlfriend about this, and that this like fake outlandish scenario allowed him to share his true feelings with her in a way that he isn't able to in real life. And it makes you wonder kind of like, what are some things that we are unable to share with the people we care about, that like if we were in a role-playing situation we might feel differently about, you know? So yeah, I thought there were many wonderful moments about like, if you had asked me to predict what this season would be, I would not have guessed it's going to use Nathan Fielder's skills to investigate aviation disasters and how they unfold. But you know, you and I recap The Curse on a week-to-week basis. Like, I'm on board with this guy and whatever he's trying to do, no matter what, no matter where he wants to take me. But yeah, Patrick, I mean, how are you feeling? Because it seems like the Rehearsal season 1 left a bad taste in your mouth. Like, are you kind of like on board for this?
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's why I described the first episode as a trap. It was like, this is how I felt last time. It's like, oh my God, I'm about to witness a masterpiece. And then I wanted to strangle the guy on the other side of the TV by the end of the first season. So I'm, you know, the essentially what he does are just like absurdist versions of going to therapy, right? Like that's kind of like a lot of what Fielder does is what you're describing. You know, like when you and I talk on a podcast, it's not like we're not having a real conversation, but like it is, like it's structured differently. You perform differently. It's a performed conversation that is still enlightening and interesting, but it's like different than sitting across the table from somebody and just chit chatting. In the same way that going to therapy, like you might just be talking, like if especially if you do like couples therapy or something, like the structure of how you talk to someone matters. And then it's at the heart of the rehearsal is like the structure of like how and why you talk to someone.
The medium is the message.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Yes. And it can play important parts in your emotional vulnerability, what you want to share, what you're willing to share. And then the comedy comes from like, yes, like actually not just building something that looks like a Panda Express, but like if you told me they were actually cooking the food there at the moment that they're filming like all this stuff, like I would believe you. Or like some version of it, like when they build the bar in the first season, they're not cooking the pizzas, but like they are cooking pizzas and then like putting out like warm pizzas for people to eat like in the bar. And that's what I find ultimately fascinating are these little relatable moments. Again, I relate to these two people and the emotional vulnerability they have with one another about how they feel about one another. I don't need Nathan stepping in to explain how he feels. I guess that's the disconnect I have with the show. And now that I'm interested / anxious to see where Fielder inserts himself into the broader narrative. Because I expect there to be, sure, it might all be about aviation, but I expect there to be a through line in the way that there was a through line in the first season. And I guess my caution comes from, will I find that through line interesting? Because it worked for you, worked for a lot of people. It didn't work for me in that first season. And every time the absurdist elements came to the fore, I was enjoying that part. But like Nathan monologuing, it's like, dude, I don't know who you are. Why would I take what you're saying seriously?
Yeah.
And I just don't know where this season ends up because we kind of haven't gotten to whatever that turn is going to be.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.